Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, a returning guest. His name is Morgan Lerette, Lerette. I interviewed him back in May about his excellent book, highly recommend it. Full title of his book that he just published is Guns, Girls, Greed. I was a Blackwater mercenary in Iraq. And this event happened just a couple days ago. Today is July 15th. But this event of Trump uh, having an assassination attempt happened, and there were so many things about the Secret Service. But then I thought this is really about protecting VIPs, and it overlapped. And I kind of my brain, just the recess of my brain goes, you should have this guy Lerette back on and talk about it because that's what he did in Iraq forever, and he worked for Blackwater, like I said, Eric Prince. And I came across, we were just kind of talking about it in the pre-show, that Eric Prince kind of made a comment about security lapses and other things like that. So I'm delighted to have an expert on to talk about this whole event and how important it was and what his thoughts are. So Morgan Lerette, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I mean, Eric Prince did nail it. This is a security lapse. Anybody that has protected, like diplomats, like I did with Blackwater, or like when presidents come into town, they roll in really heavy, right? There's C5s that are landing. They're landing 2, 3, 4 days in advance. This is unacceptable. And I'll tell you why it's unacceptable. You have this picture up right now. I could do a map reconnaissance and I could tell you that there's 2 points right now, well, probably 3 that you would want to look at, right? One is where you have your counter snipers. They were behind President Trump. The second one is that water tower back there. That's high ground. The third one is the building and the roofs over there. Those would be like at least the 3 places that I would want to make sure that we had coverage. And right now what's happening is you're having the blame game. The Secret Service is saying, well, we asked the local police to do this. They didn't secure that area. It's all garbage. Like, your job is to protect the former president of the United States that is running for president. And the fact that you couldn't look at a map and say, hey, we probably want to put our assets, Secret Service specifically, over there where you have a rooftop, where you have high ground, where you have a reasonably easy shot on the president at 130 to 140 meters, whatever they're saying it, is absolutely asinine. And I'll walk you through kind of what we did when we were at Blackwater. So the first thing is 2004, all we had was maps. Google Earth sort of existed, but I downloaded it on my computer and it crashed it. So all you had was these crappy paper maps, but you would be able to look at those and say, that's a tall building, that's a short building, we're going over here. And we would go out there and we would do a reconnaissance. I'm sure the Secret Service did the same thing here. You drive out there, you do a reconnaissance, and you start identifying different points of attack. So that was not done adequately. It just couldn't have been, or else you wouldn't have said, hey, have the police cordon off this area. Now, the second thing we would do after we would do a recon is we would have an advance team. Now, the advance team goes out there and puts up different positions to make sure those avenues of attack are mitigated. So the counter sniper was pointing directly at that other location. So they already knew that was a point of attack, or a potential point of attack. And they should have had somebody over there on the other side saying, look, you can't park here. Now, here's the problem with doing it in Iraq versus doing it in the States. In Iraq, we just assumed everybody wanted to attack the diplomats, right? Everybody had malintent. Here, you've seen the videos of the guys that are tailgating, the guy's drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, he's pointing to the guy on the roof. Like, you can't assume malintent, but you should. You absolutely should. And especially when something is going on with, like, the president that is speaking and all the hyperbole that's going around, that he's Hitler and he's going to take us back, we're not going to be democratic. You absolutely have to have people that say, look, you can go and tailgate over there to the left or to the right, but by God, you can't tailgate right here where there's a whole bunch of, like, easy shots at a president. So that's kind of my initial take.
Right, and it's remarkable. So it's either extreme negligence or intent. Do you have thoughts on it, on whether it's one or the other or both? What's your take? Like, I mean, there's other real specialists online too, guys who are in special ops. There was a guy, I think he's a House of Representative, Stephen Mills, maybe is his last name, who made comments and said, this is intentional negligence. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think they put the A team on protecting Donald Trump. So I try not to assume malice when incompetence is the more likely answer. Occam's razor, right? So first off, they're not putting the A team with President Trump. The best people are going to be protecting Biden, and then this is probably one of those details that people fill after they got in trouble and they don't want them on the other detail. We saw this at Blackwater all the time, right? You have a guy that's not performing, we send him to another team. Like that's just how it kind of works in corporate America. Same thing with the Secret Service. So when you see that lady that's like huddled behind the president, like she's taking cover behind him, or she's trying to holster her pistol while they're getting him into a Suburban, like these are just not your A-team players. And when I got into Blackwater in 2004, that's when Kerry and Bush were under re-election, right? They were going through the election campaign. And it was exceedingly difficult to get a security clearance because anybody that's around the president has to have a security clearance. They're cooks, the people that are going and putting wire or tape around different events. But all those guys have to have clearances. Now, who's going to do those clearances? You're not going to put your best guys making sure they have clearance and they putting them in the right spot. You're going to give them absolutely the incompetent people.
Right. So that's really what you think. So do you think that this is just incompetence that they were able to take a shot? It's not that far off, really, as far as a sniper shot is concerned. I mean, it wasn't. Would you think that was a difficult shot or an easy shot to make for somebody who doesn't seem to have any training either? I mean, we don't know too much about the shooter, supposedly.
Look, that's the big question, right? I don't think he had sufficient training. It sounded like he got off 3 rounds and then there's a pause and there's a couple more rounds that go off. My assumption is those first 3 rounds were him. And then the second rounds were the counter snipers that were actually engaging him. 150 meters for somebody that just isn't used to it. That's a pretty long shot, right? You're looking at 450 feet. That's a pretty tough shot, especially when your target is moving. And granted, Trump isn't moving a whole lot, but you can tell he's not trained, first off, because he tries to shoot him in the head. Nobody is going to try to shoot you in the head if they're well trained, unless they're exceptionally well trained. Snipers will do that. Usually with like military members that have gone through basic training, they tell you to shoot center mass, right? It's a bigger target and it's going to have probably the same effect over the long term that it would over the short term if you actually do a headshot. So that leads me to believe this guy, he probably went out to the range and he fired some rounds, but at the end of the day, he was not well trained. He was not professionally trained by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Eric Prince brought up like the windage. I don't think this guy was looking at the windage at all. I wouldn't, not at 150 meters, and I've been pretty well trained because at 150 meters, your bullet is just. So people think bullets go straight. They don't. Bullets actually kind of arc up and then they arc down. So when you're zeroing your weapon, you zero it at 25 to 50 meters, and then the bullet is going to be in that exact same spot at between 250 and 300 meters. So if he would have been going center mass, his bullet would have been a little bit high, probably in like the high chest area, but you could tell he was definitely going for the head, and that's the hardest shot you're ever going to take.
Do you believe that it's correct that Trump's movement of the head was what saved him? Because he kind of was looking left and right there. He's like looking towards the shooter, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. So, let's go back to the training part, right? So the shooter gets up on the roof, lays down. So that's good, from a shooting perspective. And then when you're behind the gun and you're about to take that shot, your adrenaline is pumping. Like the smallest movement, if you move 1/8 of an inch where your barrel is, then that 1/8 of an inch goes exponentially wider as your bullet goes further. So my assumption is that it was absolutely advantageous that he moved his head one way or the other. But my assumption is that the trainer, and it looked like the trainer or the shooter actually had an EOTech. So an EOTech, for those that don't know, is like a little dot. It's a point that you can look through and it'll tell you where your bullet's supposed to hit. If he had an EOTech, that small movement of him moving his head, if it made him move his rifle one way or the other, could have definitely was the difference between actually being able to assassinate, a former president versus being able to hit him in the ear.
Wow, incredible. Do you know? I mean, somebody I said online thought it was a subsonic round so that it wouldn't make enough noise. Do you think that this shooter had enough kind of experience or skill to select appropriate caliber of bullet or anything like that?
No, my assumption is that this shooter just went and grabbed an AR-15, which is a 223 round, 5.56 if you're military, and did not have a suppressor. And I say that because the video that you can hear 3 cracks, really, really like in succession. If you hear a bullet from 150 meters being fired, it's not nearly as loud if you're the person that's right up next to it. So I don't think he had a suppressor on it. Just because of the how loud it is. And then if you hear the 2 shots that happen afterwards, you can see the counter snipers. I'm assuming it's their bullets. Those were about the same like audible level. So I don't think he had a suppressor on him. I think he was, this is what I would love to run down a conspiracy theory hole, but nobody knows the ground like the locals, right? Mm-hmm. When I go somewhere, the first thing I do is I run 3 to 4 miles around the neighborhood. And what I'm doing is I'm just looking through the neighborhood. This guy lived here. He knew exactly where he was going. He knew where to park. The fact that nobody stopped him when he parked was absolutely insane. He knew that there was a building. He must have just been sitting there going, I can't believe I'm getting away with this. Like, how insane is it that somebody's just going to let you up? But, there's people over there. They're drinking beer. They're smoking cigarettes. Maybe people thought he was just a Trump supporter. And then he starts getting up on the building and people start alerting. But he knew where he wanted to go. He knew what he wanted to do, but he didn't have the training or the capacity to be able to get it done effectively.
He was on the roof for at least 2 minutes. Like, this video shows them, like, this is a merge video for people who are just listening to audio. It shows him on the roof and there are people making moves and screaming. So he didn't like get on the roof and move like in 10 seconds and take a shot. He really was kind of taking his time. It's very odd. Do you think that there's anything suspicious about the sniper unit, the 2-man sniper unit that's above him? Why didn't they shoot him before he shot first? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. Law enforcement, Secret Service, I'll put them underneath that umbrella, is so afraid to make the wrong decision that they will not make the right decision. So, and it's unsubstantiated reports that he had him in his sights for 3 minutes. You can see he's looking down the scope. And supposedly he called in to say, can I engage? And he was essentially put on hold. They didn't say you can't engage. They just said, we're going to assess it, is my assumption. Because if they would have said no, there would be people out there saying, yeah, no, he was told specifically do not engage the assassin. So I think that when you start bringing in the Secret Service and the bureaucracy, to Eric Prince's point, where you have to ask to be able to engage, that's why it was delayed for 2-3 minutes at a time. Now, if I'm that shooter, I would love to put myself in that place and say, look, I'm going to engage, because at this point, if I see like there's a rifle, if I see this guy army crawling across a roof, he's not up there to go party and tailgate. Like, he's up there with some kind of malintent. I would love to think that I'm going to take the shot. But if you are a career police officer and everybody's telling you you can't, then you start deferring to the bureaucracy. Same thing happened in Benghazi, right? We have these people, they're staged, they're ready to go into Benghazi, and people are being told, oh, just wait, let's assess it. Let's figure out what's going on. Now, here's what I probably would have done. If I was this guy, or if I was the police officers that supposedly saw him climbing up on the roof, at that point, you probably just want to fire off a round into the ground, into the air, something so that the Secret Service knows there is a threat and they get him off that podium. Or we have these new things. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called a radio. It's a handheld radio. They probably needed to call up and say, dude, we got a guy on the roof. Get him the heck out of there. But again, how many levels of bureaucracy do they have between that person that may have radioed it in and the person that's actually got to make that decision to pull Trump off of the stage?
Interesting, because there is movement. You can see, like, here's the picture for people who aren't on the video. There's the snipers up here watching. There's a policeman right to the left of the tree. This guy in red knows something's going on because he's getting behind the tree. But the cop isn't that far away from that area, so he could have just fired a shot into the ground. And there's also Secret Service behind Trump kind of moving. I mean, this merged video is really interesting for a lot of reasons because it shows like people moving, but then I don't know if it shows the sniper take the shot. I don't think so, but they definitely do take a shot from there. And then there's I don't know if you've seen this, but like there was a bullet that hit some kind of hydraulic thing or something because it goes off in the background. Do you see that there?
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I've never seen that video.
So
that's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's totally crazy. And then there was another guy who took a shot to the head and passed away. Colangelo, I think was his name, a 50-year-old fireman. Do you think that the shooter might have been shot and tried to get off a random shot, or do you think that he tried for Trump and somebody in the audience, or do you think there might have been other shooters or other people involved?
I don't think there was another shooter. I've seen the videos of the lady that's behind Trump, and as soon as something happens, she grabs her phone, and people are saying, "Oh, she knew it was coming." No, we live in a social media age, right? She's like, "Holy crap, I got to get my phone out because I'm going to put this on TikTok and I'm going to get 1 million views." That's what I assume she's doing. What I think happened was, so supposedly there was 2 cops that were down there. One of the cops jumped on the other cop's shoulder, looked at the top of the roof, and the guy pointed his rifle at the cop. The cop ended up falling off his buddy's shoulders. Now, look,
now we're joined by another guest. His name is Robert.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, so at that point, that's when you should probably be shooting rounds into the ground, right? Like if you saw a guy, he's got a rifle, he's on top of a building, you know he's not supposed to be there. It's time to alert the press. Yeah, no pun intended. So once he fell off of that, then everybody's saying, "Oh, it's the coward of Broward County," all the other stuff. I just don't think that there was cowardice in it. I think that guy got on the roof and they couldn't figure out how the heck to get on the roof. And then that counter sniper, I guarantee that counter sniper would have taken the guy out if they would have fired some kind of a bullet, if they would have got on the radio. I mean, something's just wrong here, right? And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theory guy, because when you're in that situation, when you're being shot at, when you're thinking that something bad is going to happen, your adrenaline's up, you're thinking extremely fast. So I'm not shocked that people, when you're thinking that fast, aren't like moved to action, especially like police officers, Secret Service. Let's be honest here. They're not well trained. They probably go out to the range once every 6 months. They go out there, they shoot. They don't practice a whole lot because they're always going to be protecting somebody. It's a confederacy of dunces.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just incompetence explains it all. It's really remarkable because there would have been multiple shots or something like that, or different something like that. But it's almost like the stand down happened or something like you said. That's it. That Trump got the second stringers. He got the lowest. Yeah, that's really it. Or third stringers, because even these women, there's like a video. I don't know if I have it, but they don't look very effective. One's got grabbing her glasses and putting it on,
and the other one is hiding behind Trump, and then she can't holster her weapon while she's at the Suburban. The fact that they didn't just pick him up and surround him and move him to that Suburban. I mean, compare this to the Reagan shooting, right? As soon as shots rang out, they pushed Reagan as hard as they could. They got him into that vehicle. Now, look, President Trump, he used it. He stood up and he said, "Fight, fight." And, he got that spectacular picture taken. But at the end of the day, your principal can only make you do certain things, and the rest of it you have to be training. Like he shouldn't have been able to say, "Where are my shoes? Let me get my shoes." They should have had him, up on top of them where he didn't have his feet on the ground anyway, and they were going to the Suburban. Now, I will say there was one female, and she's got her head underneath Trump's arm. She's the one that you could tell is kind of locked in, right? She's putting her head between a bullet and the president of the United States. That's what she's doing there. Like, she's not trying to hide. She's actually trying to get her cranium where, his vital organs are. So I'll give her that. But some of the other ones, it's just kind of shocking about the bullets. So when you fire 3 bullets in succession, when you shoot, your rifle always jumps, right? And when you're trained to shoot, you know it's going to jump, and you're able to let it come back down, and you shoot again, right? And you also wait for your breathing. So the best time to shoot, and you can see it on that American Sniper movie, is when you take a breath out, you have a nice pregnant pause right there. Your body is still. That's when you start pulling back on the trigger. My guess is the first shot was the one that hit him in the ear. Second and third shot that you can hear were probably, I wouldn't say wildly off course, but sure as heck not nearly as close. It ended up killing the firefighter. The second injury was a guy that was a former Marine that got hit. But they're in that same trajectory of where the bullets were coming from. So that's why I don't think it's a second shooter. If there was a second shooter, you would kind of see it cross, right? Like that's what they train you. You want to have cross fields of fire. There would be injuries on another field of fire, and I just haven't heard or seen anything about that.
Right, that makes perfect sense. So like he took that one shot and wasn't a very well trained one, and then got the other two off. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's incredible. It's just really by a hair's breadth that Trump survived. Like it's really something else. I mean, do you mind listening to Eric Prince's analysis? Maybe you can respond to that, because he wrote, hopefully after the tragedy yesterday in Butler, PA, we can all recognize the unaccountable, bloated bureaucracies continue to fail us as Americans. Donald J. Trump is alive today solely due to a bad wind estimate by an evil would-be assassin. As the graphics show, the full value wind of just 5 miles per hour was enough to displace the unconfirmed but likely light 55 grain bullet 2 inches from DJT's intended forehead to his ear. DJT was not saved by USS brilliance. In fact, Secret Service allowed a rifle-armed shooter within 150 yards to a pre-planned event is either malice or massive incompetence. So it's just like he really goes on in detail about all that stuff. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is absolute incompetence. At its best, it is incompetence. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that it's not malice. I know that there's a lot of people in government that aren't fans of Donald Trump, but I wasn't a fan of a lot of the diplomats that we protected, and that would not have stopped me from jumping in the way of a bullet or grabbing my principal and getting him into a car, right? Putting myself in harm's way. That's what you get paid for. That's what you signed up for. So I do assume it's incompetence. I also assume that the shooter wasn't well trained enough to understand windage, right? They call it Kentucky windage if you want. And I don't know which way the wind was blowing. Was it blowing right? Was it blowing left, east, west, whatever it was? So maybe, the wind actually got it closer versus further away. I have no idea about that. But I also think that the shooter had no idea about that.
Right. He just wasn't even calculating it.
Yeah, well, and the bureaucracy, I think, is really the big part. And Eric Prince is a very savvy businessman. He tries to make things efficient. Eric Prince probably could have opened up a donut shop and it would be all over the United States. He's a genius when it comes to business. Bureaucracy slows everything down. And that's what I was saying earlier is did the counter sniper have to make a call and say, I see somebody, can I engage? And then it gets to his chain of command that then goes, we have a sniper. And then it gets to the third, to the fourth, and somebody's sitting there, in an air-conditioned van saying, well, let's make sure that they have a weapon available. Like at some point you have to take, and this is why the US military actually works when it works, is you take that responsibility and you put it at the lowest level and you say, no matter what happens, I got your back. And that's what I think the Secret Service and local police are not doing anymore. They are questioning every single thing that every single police officer does. And if that person had taken that shot and it was just a guy that was trying to get to the top of the roof and crack open a Keystone Light, he would have been absolutely hung out to dry. Right. So you put bureaucracy in there to make sure that you're not the one that's, having to explain what happened. And, in this case, like we lucked out that he missed, but at the end of the day, those are precious, precious seconds. And think of how fast a bullet moves. And we have to spend 3, 4, 5 minutes telling a guy, hey, I know you see him. It looks like he's got a rifle. Let me call the VP. Like, come on, take the shot. Let him take the shot.
But isn't in military snipers, don't they have the spotter too? So they've got the gun guy, but they have the spotter who's supposed to account for distance, wind, anything else, right? Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And 130 meters for a guy that's well trained with a sniper rifle with a scope where you could probably see the guy's nose hairs. He probably didn't need to hear distance, direction, all that stuff that a sniper would need. That's why they're counter snipers, right? Something happens, they engage what happens there. That's different than a sniper that's, sitting on top of a building and waiting for their targets to appear. Now, they did have two people up there. It looked like both of them had rifles. So my assumption is that the other one was, the secondary or the spotter, if you want to call it that.
Right.
But I don't know if they both had field of vision on the guy. Let's be honest here. Like the roof is not very high pitched. So if you're crawling on that roof, you're a pretty small target as it is. So the fact that they saw him is spectacular. The fact that the radio communication wasn't saying, by God, shoot that guy is an absolute failure. And I mean, sometimes it's just luck. I hate to say that, but some days you get lucky and some days you don't.
How many times did you have people try to take out VIPs? I remember one famous video of one of the Blackwater contractors or somebody. It was in Afghanistan, and somebody came up and he just kind of used his gun and moved it down and killed the guy who was after one of the VIPs. Did you have very many instances of people trying to take out your VIPs?
No. And you know why? Because we did our freaking homework, right? Like at the end of the day, you do your homework. You know how you're going to ingress. You know how you're going to egress. So you know how you're going to get in. You know how you're going to get out. You know what routes you're going to take in. You know what routes you're going to take out. There's 2 or 3 or 4 of those that you're going to have at any given time. We always put people at the very high ground of our building. So if we saw a threat, they could radio down and say yes or no. And the decision was made on the ground. It was not made by somebody sitting, at a tactical operations command, 15, 20 miles away. It was made on the ground. So we did the same thing that they didn't do, right? You take the high ground, which they did. You got to take the medium ground, which they didn't. And they didn't. I still can't fathom why there was nobody on that water tower. Like, you want to talk about taking the high ground. This is just me. I would have had guys on the roof behind Trump. I would have had guys on the roof where the shooter was, because why the heck would you leave high ground for somebody? And probably had somebody that was on top of that water tower, because then you have all your fields of fire that are covered, and you're making it to where it's not a 130-meter shot. It's a much longer, more difficult shot to make. So, I mean, 95% of protection, probably more than that, 99% of protection is preparation. And they crapped the bed on that.
They did. Wow, fascinating. And if you now that we've got 4 months till the election, they're probably going to change. What would you recommend to Trump and his team from here on out? I mean, I guess you've already pointed out the deficiencies in this situation in Butler, PA. What do you think about the future? Do you have any thoughts?
I'm going to tell a story here, but I had a cleaner that came in, and I got this natural stone on my shower, and she poured a bunch of bleach on it, and it ended up bleaching the natural stone. And I had to go through it. I had to clean it up myself. And my wife was like, "Hey, do we fire her?" And I said, "No, you don't fire her, because she's not going to make that mistake again." Right? Now, I don't think they're going to make that mistake again at this point. There's absolutely no way that they're going to make that mistake again. But really what it comes down to is you need more bodies. If that was the problem, if you did not have enough people, get more bodies. And you know what? I know that Trump is probably a difficult principal. We had these, principal that would say, "Hey, stop here. I want to get a falafel." And it's like, well, this is not really a safe area, or an area that we even knew that we were going to. We couldn't do anything, but you adapt to that. So if President Trump is going to go to the next place, I would have people there now. Whatever his next campaign stop is after the RNC convention, get your people over there right now and start doing site surveys. I mean, we have Google. Think about this. In 2004, we had paper maps in Iraq, and now we have Google Street View. You could look at that building on Google Street View and say, "Holy crap, that's, it's an industrial building. It's got to be 20 feet tall to the top of the roof." Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can look at it in 3D. You can probably even get your heights and all that stuff figured out. So it's incredible. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just an incredible event. I mean, some people are saying that the wind doesn't have an effect. I mean, does it really have an effect or not? Or do you think Prince is right in that regard?
It does have an effect on precision, but at 150 meters, it doesn't have that much of an effect, right? So when you shoot a bullet, like I was saying, at 300 meters is kind of where it's starting to tail off. Like you're not going to get the velocity. At 150 meters, you still got a heck of a lot of velocity. It's the difference between a bullet that's going 10 feet versus a bullet that's going 100 feet. All right, you still have all that velocity behind it. I don't think wind was the determining factor, but we do have a lot of armchair quarterbacks. I can't tell you how many people are on X that are like, well, when I was a infantryman cook in the 3rd Airborne 17th, like, look, at the end of the day, you have, and I think you see this with a lot of shooter situations. You have a person that is not well trained, that is going up there, that is able to get some shots off, and your response has to be swift and it's got to be lethal, right? We could bring up Uvalde. They could have went in there at any given time, but they assumed that this trainer, this is what I think, they assumed the trainer had good training, or the shooter had good training. Like he was a well-trained shooter the way that they are, a well-trained shooter, and didn't want to go in. That's ridiculous. You go in knowing that your adrenaline is pumping and their adrenaline is pumping harder and your training is better. And they did that in this situation. I mean, the Secret Service didn't do a very good job because, by God, how do you not get a guy in a Suburban? It's not that difficult.
Right. It's very strange. And I mean, kind of strange stuff too. They say that he had explosive devices too. So we're still kind of finding out information about that. There's this one guy I want to show, and you can kind of analyze this after he's done. He's the guy I was telling you about, I think he's a member of the House of Representatives. But let's listen to what he says and you can comment on it, okay?
Bring in Florida Congressman and former U.S. Army sniper, Corey Mills. What kind of shot was this, Corey, from 130 yards?
Look, at the end of the day, this is a shot that your basic training boot camp soldier is requested to make within their 9-week period. This is one of the easiest shots, and they train all the way out till 300 or 500. And when I was doing the counter sniper, it wasn't with the United States Army. It was actually when I was with the State Department and was doing this exact thing, which is trying to look at going out with an advanced team, establishing what the perimeter is. And then as a sniper, when you would set up, you'd put together your range sketch or your range fan cards. And that would tell you where your 100, your 200, your 300, and you'd identify the areas of threat that you would be able to mitigate. And if there's multiple targets, you understand that your elevation and windage knob wouldn't have to be messed with, especially at 160 yards. You could literally just look, quickly glance, and know from the reference point, whether it be a building, whether it be a lone tree, whether it be a parking lot, maybe it's a road. Bottom line is that this is massive negligence to the point of me speculating on what was intentional and what wasn't.
Wow. When you're doing a site survey and you're seeing this rooftop not that far away, why did it look like the counter sniper team was a little surprised?
I can only speculate, and we'll have to wait until the investigation comes out, that they thought local law enforcement was potentially climbing up onto the roof when they saw a dark object on a light roof. But here's the issue.
Wait. You're saying maybe they misconstrued crooks for local law enforcement?
It's very possible. I don't want to speculate until the investigation is over, but the bottom line is that if you saw someone climbing onto a roof that you hadn't authorized any clearance on, it's got a clear line of sight. It's exactly adjacent to the shooting where the president was sitting, and you're talking about a pop shot, and you got people yelling, and there should have been comms. The minute that local law enforcement, who apparently had a rifle pointed on, there should have been an emergency frequent comms channel that they could have said, we have a shooter on the roof. Secret Service should have rushed the stage and immediately took the president and took him off, and then responded to the counter sniper. The shot should not have gone off. That is the failure in itself. You're supposed to be able to try, the best security is when you go in and you're actually able to prevent an incident, not react to an incident. Even if you would have left a law enforcement officer's patrol car in that parking lot with the lights on, that could have been a deterrent. But when you have nothing that is actually showing force protection, you're encouraging this. Look, I'm not sure about who the individuals are on the individual detail Secret Service, but I can tell you under this Biden administration, the one thing I've seen is massive DEI hires. And I can tell you, when you primarily go after DEI, you end up with DIE.
So when you have these counter snipers waiting until 8 rounds are fired, what accounts for that?
Do you think he fired 8 rounds, or do you think he fired 3?
I can hear 3, and then there's a pause, and you hear 2 more, and then usually the video cuts off. So my assumption is that he fired 3. Based on the casualty count, if he fired 8 rounds, I think you would have a higher casualty count than the 1 injured and the 1 killed, and then Trump. So, I mean, and he's right? You are trained at basic training to be able to take a 130-meter shot, like with iron sights. You can make that shot all day. Where he's wrong is that you're not aiming at the head of that target. You are aiming at the body. Now, I got a pretty big melon, right? But you could tell me that it's got to be a heck of a lot easier to hit me here, where it's 2 to 3 times the size of my melon, than it is up here. I think probably he may have gotten off, 1 or 2 rounds more, but unless he took a pregnant pause, right? Unless he fired off 3 rounds and then went back at it, which I doubt, because once you fire off those 3 rounds, you're just going to keep going if you can. So that's why I think that you hear the 3 rounds, sniper hits him, and my assumption is you had probably either 2 shots from one, or each one took a shot, and then it was neutralized. Now, he's right, and I feel like he repeated what I've been saying. Survey, figure out where the heck
validated it, 100% validated it.
Yeah, fields of fire. What are your fields of fire? Where's your sniper? Where's your counter sniper? Make sure that you have interlocking fields of fire and know what every distance is. Like, that's not difficult.
Do you think that the diversity, equity, inclusion may have something to do with the incompetence? Is that they don't have the right people for the job? That might play into it.
I mean, it sure as heck doesn't help. I'll tell you that. I do think to get on a presidential detail, as opposed to being the person that shakes people's hands as they come on a White House tour, you probably have a number of years in service. That said, DEI is not about who you're hiring as much as it is about who you're hiring and who you're promoting within the ranks. So, the lady that couldn't put her gun in her holster, she may have been a regular hire, and she ended up getting promoted, even though you could tell she's not competent. I mean, everybody can tell she's not competent, but she may have been promoted because that's what they want to do, is they want to promote those within the ranks.
Yeah, I think that the actual head of the Secret Service now said that openly, that they wanted more women. So it is interesting how that plays out. Do you trust an investigation into this event?
No. Look, and I've said like 3 to 4 times, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. But at the end of the day, what you're going to have is you're going to have an investigation. And this is how it always goes with any kind of government organization. They investigate, they come back and they say, nobody's to blame, everybody's to blame. You can't actually put the blame on anybody in particular. And that's frustrating, because I think somebody in a leadership position, either the person that said, hold on, let's verify that that's a shooter up there, or, hey, don't shoot yet, or, hey, our site survey told the local cops to go over there 130 meters. You're the Secret Service. You're going to tell local cops from admittedly small town USA to go and do something that's that important that it leaves open a field of fire at the president, former president, maybe next president of the United States. Like, heads should roll. They won't. They absolutely won't. But that's what any stupid investigation. Liz Cheney is going to do the investigation. I heard spend $8 million, and then at the end of it, nobody will know what happened.
Is that really true? Did she
No,
get
I just
appointed?
made that
You're
up.
joking. I wouldn't be surprised, though. That just wouldn't surprise me at all. But it's like, you can't trust the investigation either. And it's an excellent point on your part that they shifted responsibility to the local police. Man, like, that in itself is absurd. Like, come on, guys. That's your job. And you're right. They show up in a C-40 or what huge transport plane, roll out all these, SUVs and tons of people, and they just couldn't do it. It's like really a shame. But thanks so much for being on the show and adding your expertise. Is there anything you'd like to add, or anything we missed or I missed?
No, I mean, I think we nailed it. I can't figure out, you have another small building over there. To me, that's another field of fire. You got that sweet water tank that's a field of fire. Now, granted, it's kind of covered by the bushes there, but at the end of the day, you still probably want to put somebody up there. And then you probably want to have a bunch of armed security, whether they're, plainclothed or not, a heck of a lot closer to the president. And I know Trump, and look, diplomats do this all the time. They don't want to be seen with the help. And I don't know if Trump is actually a really cool guy with it, but at the end of the day, when you're up there making a speech, you don't want 3 people standing there, black jackets looking like they're the Men in Black. But they should have probably had somebody closer to him, whether that's directly in front of the stage, somebody that was kind of behind him on the stage out of camera view. This is just like I said, it's a confederacy of dunces. It's like, you never know when that one small stupid thing that you don't do is going to bite you in the butt. I'll give you an example, actually, from the book where I didn't tie down our ammunition and we ended up ramming into a car, and my ammunition bucket ended up smashing me in the hip. And it just about, it shot pain down my leg, up my back. And I thought, why didn't I just tie that damn thing down? It would have taken like 30, 40 seconds. I'll bet you that they'll look back on this if there's a decent investigation and say, these are the little stupid things that we missed, why it happened. And then they'll say, but nobody's to blame. It's all right. He looks like Evander Holyfield.
Right. He does. Do you think it's worthwhile for them or the campaign to add special forces type contractors to the campaign? Would you recommend that?
I mean, I would. And this is the legal gray area that private military contractors run into, because if those snipers on top of the building were civilians, let's say through Constellus or whatever Blackwater is called nowadays, if they had engaged that target, and let's say it was just a guy going up there getting ready to crack a natty ice, then what would happen is that they would be able to find blame pretty quick. They would say, oh, that's the private military contractors that we brought in. And you bringing them in caused this innocent person to die. So if I was a contractor, I sure as heck wouldn't take that. I had a call during the last election to go protect Alex Jones when he came to Arizona. And I was like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, because if somebody gets crazy and hawks a loogie on me and I punch him in the face, everybody's going to say, oh yeah, that horrible private contractor did this. It's not Alex Jones's fault or the guy that hawked a loogie on him. So I mean, it's something that they should probably look at if they're going to do it. I would assume they have to be some kind of like a sworn in process of the Secret Service, so that they understand that they are under all the rules, regulations, and protections that the Secret Service have or local law enforcement have, if they have to execute their job on it.
Gotcha. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
No, I'm just glad Trump made it out. Like, that is those little stupid things, and they come back and they haunt you, and it could have been a much worse situation. And here's the one thing I'll say to kind of go up to a higher level, is that we always assume people on the other side of the aisle, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that the other side is stupid, that they're dumb. This kid wasn't dumb. Like, he knew what he was doing, and he had a good enough plan and knew the lay of the land enough to be able to say, oh, hey, all these variables are in place to where I can climb up on that roof and I can take my shot. Never assume that the person on the other side of the aisle or the person that wants to do you harm is stupid. Always assume that they are the smartest person on the planet and protect yourself against that. And if the Secret Service had done that, we wouldn't be talking about this. We would be talking about how there was a sniper on a roof, got shot, President Trump got taken out, and he was fine.
Well said. Well said. Thanks so much for your time, your expertise. And your book is Guns, Girls, Greed. I was a Blackwater mercenary in Iraq. I highly recommend it. Where can people find that? And where can people reach out to you if they have any additional questions?
Yeah, go track it down on Amazon. We got the Kindle, we got the hardcover, soft cover. We got Jay Moore actually read the book if you want to listen to it. And he did a fantastic job, so you can get it there. And if you want to track me down on X, Instagram, and TikTok, it's just at Blackwater Dude and the number 1. So at Blackwater Dude 1. Happy to talk turkey.
Awesome. And it's, again, the guest is Morgan Lerette, Lerette, about the attempted Trump assassination. Incredible event. Like, it would have been a world-shattering event if he hit him. Like, really something else. So I appreciate your time and the short notice. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Will.
All right, stay there.